Hi ladies and gents, this is Linda Faychick777 and today we're going to be doing another easy DIY farmhouse decor. Don't have power tools? No problem. I'm going to show you how to get around that option. I found this cool sign. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit. Nice and big. Found it at Habitat for Humanity resale store for $1. You heard me right. But we're going to flip this sign around so it makes it already framed and turn it into a nice and easy, cute farmhouse style sign. Have I said the word farmhouse enough? I think you got the gist of it. But anyway, before we get going, go ahead and hit that red subscribe button down below if you're not already a subscriber. I would love to have you follow me along because when you hit that button, we become fast friends. And also, share this video on social media. It helps my channel to grow faster. And if you're not already following me on my other social media platforms, Instagram and Pinterest, on my blog, please do that. I would love to have you come follow me there as well. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do here is start by base painting this sign. I'm using the Waverly brand chalk paint I purchased at Walmart. It's called Truffle. It's just a dark brown. I'm going to paint the whole thing. You don't have to be neat with it. It's just a base coat. And then sometimes I like to do a little bit, one coat of spray paint first. You'll see here it's Rust-Oleum Ultra Matte. So that way when I go in with this Waverly chalk paint in white, I don't have to chalk paint as much. I went ahead, I spray painted it, I taped off that inner perimeter there because we're going to paint that a different color, and then I am painting with this white. And here's a tip for you. If you want to completely spray paint, which I do sometimes, I will often buy that Rust-Oleum Ultra Matte or just matte to get that chalk finish like you're using with this acrylic paint. Some people will buy that chalked brand at Walmart or wherever, and it's like $6.99 a can. The Rust-Oleum matte paint is $3.99 a can. It gives you the same exact finish as that chalk paint, I believe anyway. So we're going to get this all painted up here, and then once it's dry, we're going to remove the inner perimeter of the tape. And a little tip for you, when we remove that tape here in just a second, if you take a craft knife and you score around the edges of that tape, when you pull the tape out, you'll have a nice, crisp, clean edge. And you'll see that here in just a minute. And so then once I pull this tape off, I'm going to re-tape around the frame area so that we can tape the intersection. But see how nice and crisp that tape is pulling off? It's a wonderful little trick. Get all this tape off here, and then off camera retaped the frame part. And now we're going in. This is Waverly brand chalk paint. It's just a gray. It's called Elephant. Sometimes this chalk paint later in this video will tend to look like a bluish color because of the camera, but it is just a nice dark gray shade. Which actually sometimes looks a little taupey, but it's a nice gray shade. The brush I'm using here is a brush I got from JamieRayVintage.com. It's an angled brush. I love it, a zebra brush. I'll put that link down below for you. It's so great when you're getting into those corners and things like I'm doing here. It's a synthetic brush, just love it. It paints very nicely. It takes the paint very well into the brush. It holds it nice, and then it paints very nicely without too much of the brush strokes. Those Zebra brand synthetic brushes don't give you very much brush strokes. I really like it. Gonna let that all dry, of course, and then I believe I go ahead and take the tape off on camera. Same technique with the craft knife. Oh, looky there, I forgot. I dried it with a heat tool to speed up the drying, and then I take the paint off. Oh, I didn't do it off camera. Here I am taking the paint off, or the tape, oh my gosh, the tape off for you. But I did use the craft knife, like I said. I scored the inner edges and took the craft knife off. Oh my gosh, sometimes when I'm trying to think ahead, so I know what's coming up, so I remember to explain things for you, and then, you know, but try to keep on track with what I'm actually looking at while I'm doing this voiceover, my words get a little bit jumbled. I'm going to go ahead and sand this. I'm going to sand all the sharp edges just to give it a little bit of distress. We'll come into like a little snapshot here for you in a moment. So you can kind of see the distressing a little bit since this is in fast forward. And I'm also going to distress the inner portion because I don't want that gray paint to look so painted. Here's the snapshot. There, you can kind of see how distressed it looks. A little blurry, but distressed. Okay, and then we're going to go in with some stenciling. I got these stencils at Joann's. This is what I'm going with, except what I did is I had to, the stencils are big, they're 12 by 12. And so what I did is I just had to go in with my Cricut Explorer machine and make my own stencil so that the font fit inside the frame. And then I'm going to go in with just some of this black paint and a pouncy brush. When you're stenciling, you want to do an up and down. I kind of do an up and down pounce motion, and then I'll go back through and just kind of drag the brush across the top of it. You want really, you can see how I'm dipping the brush into the paint on the left side there, and then I kind of wipe it off onto the plate, okay, before I pounce it onto the stencil. If it's too thick, your paint is going to bleed a lot. So you want really thin paint on your brush. It's going to actually look like you don't have enough paint on your stencil. Because once it dries, you can go back in and add a little bit more paint. But you want really thin layers, up and down pounce motion. Okay, and then like I said, I will drag the brush across it as well just to kind of take off any excess. So I'm going to peel it up, and you're going to see one of my letters down below didn't quite fill in very good, the F right down there at the lower right. And so what I did is went back in and kind of, I cut out that part of the stencil and relaid it back on and repainted that. So you'll see that stencil down there in just a minute. And so I did that, and I'm letting that dry. So I'm just kind of picking off all the excesses of my stencil here while that dries. Even though you do thin layers, will still bleed a little. Okay, but we'll combat that in a moment. So right now I'm using these plastic letters I purchased from Tuesday Morning. They're by Heidi Swap because I like my farmhouse signs to have a little bit of dimension. You can see how the F turned out just great. Redoing that a little bit. These letters are for those letterboard signs, so I'm just cutting off those extra little prongs, okay, laying them where I want. And I decided I wanted a little bit more sanding inside, and I'm going to sand the letters. I do that with all of it. See how below they're really crisp, but you can see a little bleeding? By going in and lightly sanding, it kind of covers up that bleeding and makes it look like it was meant to be that way, like it didn't bleed through your stencil at all, like you meant it to look a little bit distressed. So I do this with all my farmhouse signs. It covers up a lot of mistakes, but just lightly sanding. You don't want too much. Okay, and then I'm sanding a little bit more into that gray area. I want some nice big chunks of paint off. And then right here I'm just kind of lining up where I want my letters. I just love that 3D effect. It gives a little bit more than in the store. You can use E6000 or Fabri-Tac glue to glue these down. I'm going to go with my trusty tried and true Fabri-Tac glue. It doesn't spread as much as if you use E6000. That kind of sometimes leaks out around the letters. You have to be really thin with it, but the Fabri-Tac does just fine. So I'm going to kind of place those in there, get them all nice and glued down. Just takes a little bit of a process here. Using my ruler helps me to line it up really well so that it looks nice and level. But see how when that first stencil I showed you how it looked on the stencil and how I kind of turned it around a little bit and made it my own. But that's a great package of stencils to get. I think it was like $15 and you end up with like 24 or 25 stencils. They are all paper stencils, so you are going to have to kind of tape them down when you go to use them. But if you don't have a die cutting machine, or I mean electronic cutting machine, it is a great option to use on your projects. So I hope you enjoyed this process, to kind of taking an old sign and upcycling it, trash to treasure, making it look like something new. And now it's great to give as a gift because it's in neutral colors, or to sell at craft bazaars, which I did this summer. I did everything in neutral. It looks really great. It looks distressed. It's 3D, easily sellable because of the neutral colors. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed this project. Please follow me on all my social media links. I thank you for sharing your time with me, and I'll talk with you again soon. Bye.